Hello BookTube, this is Kelly with Books I'm Not Reading, and I'm here today as part of ShakeTube 2019 to make a belated video on Love's Labor's Lost, and this is my library copy covered with stickers. I wasn't going to make a video about this, frankly, because the other videos that have been made on this play for ShakeTube this year I thought were so good. So I will link to the moderator for this play, which is Lukash at Totally Pretentious. I will link to his video down below so that you can watch it. He does a really great job of talking about this play. So a couple things going into reading this. I had just finished Hamlet, and I'm still kind of on that Hamlet high. I really loved Hamlet, and so this is a very different play and definitely not up to the standard of Hamlet, but it's still worth reading and discussing. I think it's a very interesting play in many ways. And the other thing that kind of played into my experience of it was somebody told me to listen to the audio version of the play while you read the play. And this is like, our library has one like publisher that they get these kinds of things from, these full cast recordings. So I don't know, this is like Complete Archangel Shakespeare Audio Go. I don't know if this is like a good version or not. I just know Act 1. That's the only act I listened to. It was so fast, and again, it's a CD, so I mean I can't really slow it down. I just felt like, what just happened? I felt like I had whiplash or something, and so I stopped doing that and just read. And again, another sort of tangent on this is that, so this fall, Jason and I will have known each other for 20 years, and we've watched a lot of movies together over the years, and read a lot of books together, and there was one particular film called The Lunchbox. It's actually a beautiful Indian film, and we were both just totally loving it. And then we got to the end, and I'm not gonna say what the end is in case you haven't seen it and you want to, but I hated the ending. I was very upset by the ending, and Jason loved the ending, and we still go rounds about The Lunchbox, even though it's been a while since we've watched it, and you know, he periodically suggests we buy it, which I'm of course very against. And it was sort of the opposite experience for me with this, because I was reading Love's Labor's Lost. Gosh, what a tongue twister. But as I was reading this, I just wasn't that into it until the end. And the ending actually I think was so fascinating that kind of redeems the rest of it. So, just a very brief summary. So the King of Navarre and 3 of his lords decide that they're gonna swear off worldly pleasures for the next 3 years. They're gonna fast, and they're not gonna sleep very much, and they're gonna study all kinds of things, and at the end of 3 years, I don't know what they're expecting to be, but they've also sworn off women. And of course, like, no sooner than they've signed this oath, somebody's like, oh hey, the Princess of France is here to see you, King Navarre. It's just like, and of course, the king falls in love with the princess, and the 3 lords fall in love with 3 of the princess's ladies-in-waiting, whatever you want to call them. And of course, they're all different, and they all have some sort of connection with them, or they've heard of them, or whatever. it was just kind of, it felt a little forced, like, right? Like, what are the odds that 4 guys are gonna meet 4 people for the first time and instantly, you know, fall in love with all of them? But that's how these things go. So the men start madly writing sonnets. One of the characters, and I don't know quite how to pronounce his name, Baron, falls in love with Rosalind. And I think they actually, to me, feel like the protagonists more than the king and the princess. Baron actually writes a letter to Rosalind and of course gives it to a fool character to deliver it, and so it doesn't get to her, but he seems much more active, and he's much more resistant in the beginning to this idea of swearing off women for the next 3 years. Anyway, and so of course, like, you know, it's all the kind of precursors to romantic comedies today, you know, people playing tricks on each other, masks, costumes, all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, there's also this other set of characters that I just think could all be classified as fools. I mean, there's a character named Dol. You can guess how exciting he is. There's actually a character in here that's named Boy. Appropriately, I guess. I mean, that's not his name, but we never learn his name. He's just the boy. And he's actually quite sharp and smart. And there's a lot of wordplay in this play. Just like playing around with puns and malapropisms. I'm sure I didn't catch most of it because it was just like I just don't know necessarily like what all the subtext. I'm assuming there was also a lot of sort of maybe raunchy humor in there as well. It felt like the word pricked was used a few too many times. But we're not going to go there. Anyway, so at the end of the play, you know, the men are just begging these women to marry them and, you know, or at least be their mistress or whatever. Just, oh, what fools these mortals be. That's a different play though. Anyway, and suddenly the Princess of France finds out her father, the King of France, is dead. So that was the big shocker, and the fact that the women turn to the men and each say, no, we're going to have a year of mourning, and they each kind of give their man a task, if you will. And again, I think Baron and Rosalind's conversation about this is the most interesting, and it's the most detailed and complex. They're both very sharp and witty characters, and really remind me of Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. And she tells him that his task is to use his sort of mirth and humor to comfort people who are dying. And he's pretty appalled at first by this. But she wants him to do that for the next year while she's in mourning for the King of France. And I thought that was so interesting to say, almost like you're a little too sharp, you're a little too rough around the edges, and you need to maybe get some humility, but you also need to see, you can't just go through life making jokes all the time. I used to work in hospice, not a nurse or anything like that. Okay, I basically answered the door. We'll leave it at that. But hearing is actually the sense that people think we develop first in the womb, and they also think it's the sense that we lose last. So even if someone is dying, could still talk to them, and there's definitely, I mean, obviously we can't know for sure. Just like we can't know much about Shakespeare, we don't know much about dying because we haven't gone through that. But the idea that Baron could say something to comfort someone, to make them smile, to, even if there's no outward expression of taking pleasure in whatever's being said to them, I think it would be really good for him, and I think it was a really, really interesting task. So anyway, I want to say Love's Labour's Lost was lost on me. There were a lot of jokes in here that I didn't get, and maybe a different edition, or I should read some more of the introduction, things like that. I just like to dive right into the play. But so anyway, it was good, and again, I feel a little bit bad that I read it coming off of kind of my Hamlet high, and maybe in the future I'll come back to it and try again. I also think I would really feel differently about the play if I have seen a film or a stage adaptation of it, which I never have for this one. So yeah. Anyway, so those are my semi-delirious, exhausted thoughts on Love's Labour's Lost. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care, BookTube.